software engineer and technical lead manager for more than 8 years at Google Mountain View. Leaving the company just this May of 21, she is now pursuing her own software projects in e-commerce. Prior to her time at Google, she also worked as a software engineer at Northrop Grumman, a multinational aerospace and defense company at NASA JPL in Pasadena, and at a few startups that all exited successfully. Here to talk about working at Big Tech, Ms. Charmaine Liu.
Hi there. Let me share my screen. Okay. Sorry, I'm confused. Let me just share my screen. Okay, I think I just did that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Let me make sure. Okay, great. Thank you, Monique, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Magandang gabi po sa akin dito sa California. It is my pleasure to be here today with all of you to share my experiences of what it is like to work at one of the big software companies. But before I go there, I'd like to share with you a story that reminded me of when I first thought about working at a software company. It was the summer of high school graduation. A friend and I were chatting while walking up Session Road in Baguio City. In that conversation, I thought to ask, after finishing school and starting work and all of that, what is your ultimate career dream? What would you hope to accomplish after all that schooling? She told me what she hoped to do, and it was a pretty big dream. I was actually blown away. Then she turned to me and asked me the same question. And I said, I wanted to work for Microsoft. This was in 1997. The internet was just starting, and Google did not even exist. Working for Microsoft was not something that felt achievable to me when I said that. I just remembered reading the story of how Bill Gates started Microsoft and is one of the biggest software companies in the world. At that time, it felt more of a lofty goal. And since she and I were talking about big dreams, so why not? I had no clue where to start or how to get there. But I kept the idea nonetheless. So the takeaway I'd like you to have from the story is that it's okay to dream big. Even when you don't quite know how to get there, let that be your North Star as you progress in your career. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Baguio City. After high school, I moved to California, and I now reside in the Bay Area with my husband and kids. I completed my primary and secondary schooling in the Philippines. The summer after high school graduation, I immigrated to the US to join my family, who moved to California a few years earlier. I completed my bachelor's in computer science and engineering at UCLA, and while working full-time, I pursued and completed my master's in computer science at USC. Here's a snapshot of my career. At my last year at UCLA, I worked as an academic part-time at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. After college, I worked as a software engineer at Northrop Grumman. And then after that, I was interested in startups, so I worked at a few of them for about 45 years. And then in 2012, I interviewed at Google and ultimately joined the company in that same year. In May of 2021, I turned in my resignation in order to pursue one of my longtime interests of starting my own software company. To Together with 3 other people, I am now building an online service in the e-commerce space. So now that you know a little bit about me and my background, I'll continue on to the main topic of what it's like to work at a big company, a big tech company. So I was at Google for about 8.5 years and worked on 3 different products. That's Google My Business, Shopping, and Photos. So I came in as a software engineer at the Google My Business product. I was basically a full stack engineer there, even though I was hired into the team as an iOS engineer. I had strong interest in learning the server side of things, and so I also started creating and implementing the front-end APIs that the mobile app was talking to. I learned to deploy my code on the Google infrastructure, which means I had to understand the deployment configure, integrate the server monitoring systems, and many other things. That's one of the things that Google generally looks for in a candidate, is the ability to adapt and quickly get up to speed with any technology a project uses or needs. Google Shopping was the second product I worked on, where I was also primarily working on the iOS app, but also implementing the server API changes. This was also the time where I went on leave for 8 months with my first child, then went and got promoted within 4 months of coming back from leave. Going for my first promotion was a positive experience for me as a woman and a first-time mother at Google, because my career progression was not impacted despite taking a long time off to have a child. So the last and longest project I worked on was Google Photos. I was there for almost 6 years. Again, I was hired in as an iOS engineer, got promoted, and became a technical lead manager, having up to 7 engineers reporting to me. After 4 years in Photos, I moved to the machine intelligence team, where I developed one of the memories features seen on top of the Google Photos app. From my experience in the products I was involved in, I was able to have as much responsibility as I want, and within reason, have opportunities to explore and be involved in the things that are interesting to me. Moving to the machine intelligence team is an example of that. I had a strong interest in learning more about AI and machine learning, that I was able to move to a team in Photos that allowed me to do that. I also mentioned earlier about promotion at Google, and in the engineering ladder, getting promoted is not something that your manager decides alone. It is something that is applied for. It requires peers and managers to write feedback of support, data showing that you already operate in that next level for at least 6 months. Then a committee would review the evidences and make a decision. Applying for a promotion can be hard and can be a source of stress for most. But once you get it, it's worth it. So I'm going to take a break from the career stuff and talk a little bit about the other fun perks of working at Google. I can only mention a few of them because there are just really too many to mention. So the campuses of many restaurants where the employees have a pick of the type of food they want to eat. And I'm referring to choices such as whether to have an omelet for breakfast, or sushi for lunch, or Korean barbecue for dinner. Then in the afternoon, choose whether to have a matcha latte or a non-fat sugar-free vanilla latte for your drink. There are also many amenities on site, such as gyms, swimming pools, tennis courts, and many more. This makes it very convenient to take on sports or hobbies. I, in particular, had taken tennis classes in the middle of my day that are offered on site. I had also learned how to cook by taking an 8-week cooking program offered for free by the kitchen staff at one of the Google cafes. The other non-tangible perks of working there is that you also get to work with really smart people on large-scale problems. Most have advanced degrees universities in the world. The other perk I also really like is the community. There are so many internal groups on different topics, such as parenting, being a new mom, being a woman engineer, or just connecting with other Filipinos at Google. You can develop friendships through there, and you can also tap into the knowledge of the community, which are generally helpful. So continuing on to the career stuff, one of the roles I had at Google is an iOS tech lead. At a high level, these four things are mostly my responsibilities. The main thing I notice about managing that is different compared to other companies is that the relationship between the manager and report is generally collaborative. As a manager, I wouldn't just tell my reports what to work on. I would also seek their input on what projects they want to work on. It is also generally frowned upon at my org for managers to be micromanaging or telling the reports what and how to do their projects in detail. In addition, coaching a report to grow professionally is also considered part of the manager's role. As a software engineer, the diagram here is generally the life cycle of a project. I would start with a design doc that describes the problem I am tackling and discuss in detail the different solutions to the problem. I would share this document with other engineers and stakeholders for feedback and comments. Typically, there is also a design review meeting attended by senior engineers and domain experts. In that meeting, I would be presenting my solutions, and people would ask questions and point out things to make sure all cases have been considered. This generally helps uncover issues and vet the solution works well before starting the actual implementation. This helps avoid wasting weeks or months going down an incorrect route. Implementation is the next one. This is the part where you actually start coding, and the code is broken down in chunks sent for code review. As part of that, unit tests are also required before sending the code out for review. These unit tests are automatically run for any commits that touches that part of the code in order to catch regressions. The next part is going through the cycle of QA testing, where a QA person would manually test the features and file bug reports. In this part, you'd also write a test document for the different test cases that the QA team would go through. And when the feature is ready, the last step is a gradual rollout. What this means is that the feature is enabled for a small subset of users. I would typically start with 1% of the user base. In the case of photos that has at least 1 billion users, that means enabling the feature for 10 million accounts. These are chosen at random. I would then go through the cycle of checking the metrics, analyzing the server logs for any issues, and checking out the server graphs for the system health. If everything looks good, then I'd roll it out some more, monitor the servers, and logs again before rolling out to more users. This is generally one of the reasons why when Google publicly releases a feature, it takes some time for everyone to be able to access it. Also, as part of launch planning, there are contingency plans in place and steps of how to roll it back in case there are issues. There are also typically on-call folks that the system automatically notifies for unexpected server behaviors. And then the cycle repeats for a new project. So an example of a project I worked on in Google Photos is this memory located at the top of the app. This project was about grouping your photos based on a particular topic and generating a memory for it. For instance, being in a beach or in the playground, or in the case of this example, grouping all the photos related to being in the woods. This feature is quite involved because what it is that it basically tries to find all your photos, analyze each of them, and determine what the topic is of that photo. The first part about the work involved here is the AI component around it. It tries to figure out signals from the photos that would indicate the high likelihood of it being about the woods. Avoid false positives, such as including photos that just happen to have trees, or many plants around it. Second, you would also want to exclude photos that are not visually pleasing. For instance, if they are blurry or the person in the photo is cut off. These photos, you would also want to exclude them. Another part to this is writing an algorithm that is efficient and fast, because the algorithm is analyzing each photo in an account to figure out which ones to include in the memory. So in my account, I probably have more than 10,000 photos. And you can just imagine that if there are thousands of photos in an account, multiply that with the billion users that Google Photos have. That's a lot of processing time needed to be able to do this. And so you wouldn't want to take months before your feature becomes available to all your users. Hence, it becomes absolutely necessary that your code is efficient and optimal to support the user base of the product. Okay, I think I only have 3 minutes. I'll try to go through this last part quickly. So now that I've given you an idea of what it is like to work at Google and the types of project you can work on, the last topic I want to talk about is the interview process for software engineering. Most companies do the same thing. The technical interview tends to be very algorithmic and tests on computer science fundamentals. So the picture at the top tends to be what the phone interview screening looks like. Basically, the interviewer, you'll be talking on the phone with the interviewer, and there's like a shared document for you to type in your answer. They do expect you to come up with a solution, a working solution to the problem in that interview. And then the one at the bottom, the one with the whiteboard, that is what the on-site interview would look like, where basically there's an interviewer on the desk, and then you'll be drawing on the whiteboard the solution to the question. I'll skip through some of these of what I was about to say, but one thing I want to point out here is that I added some resources here for anyone who would like to, when you need to prepare for an interview, a technical interview. The book, one is a book, and one is an on-site platform, a website, so the book is Cracking the Coding Interview book. There's about 189 programming questions there. And then the website is like just many different problems that you can practice on. So we're at the end of my talk. I hope that my presentation and the stories of my experience working at Google have been enjoyable and informative. I am very grateful to be here. And thank you, everybody. If you have any questions or follow-up, if you'd like to reach me, feel free to email me at the email address that I have on the slide. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Charmaine Lu. All right, so later, Ms. Charmaine Lu is part of our panel discussion. So any questions related to her discussions will be answered there. All right? Okay, so before we head on over to our break, we would also like to thank our sponsors for making Y4IT 2021 happening. All right, so thank you to ASUS, Paymaya, Smart PLDT, Oracle, Linux Professional Institute, Palo Alto Networks, Microgenesis Business Systems, Archer M Security, Empire Locks, Delta Multimedia Inc., Panadera de Pantoja, and Teleperformance. We also like to mention that we are looking for info system developers and web app developers. So if you would like to start your career in these positions, please send your CVs to Janine Gatchalian at jfgatchalian@up.edu.ph. Again, that's jfgatchalian at up.edu.ph. For more info, please see the details on what's shown on the screen right now. Alright, so for our students naman, here is how to request for your Y4IT 2021 e-certificates. Alright, so please use the bit.ly link shown on your screens. An e-certificate will be provided for a fee of 100 pesos per session attended, and a total of 600 pesos if you will join all via email as soon as we have verified your participation and an e-copy of your payment receipt uploaded via request form. You can also opt to make a one-time payment via these available payments. All right, so we have GCash, Paymaya, Landback, and BPI. Payment instructions are available via the request form also, so check it out. So lastly, if you have any questions or presentations, please email us at info.y4it@upsit.org. And last but not the least, keep your eyes peeled as we'll be giving out the instructions on how to join our raffle later. Yes, may raffle tayo, kaya please stay tuned, alright? You may win amazing prizes by of course, our amazing sponsors. So yes, now we will be right back after this 20-minute break. So please be back after 20 minutes. See you again later.